When I learned the importance of my hormones and decided to live in alignment with them, it changed my life. As we know, I was wrongly diagnosed with polycystic ovary syndrome at the age of 15 after suffering with painful and irregular and heavy periods for years. I find the healthcare system to be lazy and flagrant with their diagnoses. At that time, I remember being handed pages and pages of scaremongering information on the way out of the doctor's office and feeling hopeless and overwhelmed. So I did what any teenager would do when faced with a problem. I ignored it. However, over the years, I became more interested in fixing this problem, and after lots and lots of reading and research into my menstrual cycle, I found that understanding my monthly hormonal cycle and taking actions to support it has been the most effective for my productivity, my periods, my moods, and my overall health and happiness. You may have heard of our hormonal cycles being split into 4 phases: menstruation, the follicular phase, ovulation, and the luteal phase. In books that I've read, those phases are also referred to as your winter, spring, summer, and autumn. Knowing even the surface level of what my body needs in each phase helps me feel better more over time, and that's what today's video is about. How we can live in alignment with our hormones by becoming well acquainted with our cycles in order to feel good. Our cycles begin with our period, the initiation of our eternal death-rebirth cycle. I think the fact that women have the power to transform in this way every month is remarkable. This is not the time for optimum productivity. I believe this time is best spent being introspective and focusing on my internal processes as much as I can. I don't want this to be mistaken with sadness or reclusiveness, because that doesn't have to be the case. But it's so easy to fall into the mindset of believing that action and output is necessary at all times. But sometimes the most productive thing you can do is rest, retract, and conserve your energy. The best way I can describe it is that you should just take it easy and be kind to yourself, baby yourself, and give into practices that make you feel safe and comfortable. Doing this takes a great level of self-awareness and knowing how to self-soothe. But full transparency, I can't rest as much as I want to in my life right now. There is money to be made and work to be done. Having to work on your period always has a level of discomfort to it, but teaching people how to swim while you're bleeding can be even more taxing. Because of all the work I've done to improve my periods through my diet and practices, it isn't as harrowing as it could be. Although there are several times I thought I was going to pass away at work while screaming out instructions to overzealous 8-year-olds on a low-ceilinged poolside that had a daily average temperature of 30 degrees. Things don't always go perfectly. The last time I was bleeding, I was woken up by nauseating cramps and reluctantly decided to take the day off work. So there's just a lot of pressure on my abdomen, and I have to go to work in about an hour, and I was really thinking about cancelling. But I have shit to pay for, so that's an unfortunate toss-up. I definitely won't be getting in the water though. Sometimes it does feel like defeat to try so hard and still experience pain, but the only way through is through. A lot of the time, I do dream of the days when I have full control over my schedule and time, and so I'll have the privilege of completely surrendering my life to the ebbs and flows of my womanly hormones. That's the ultimate goal for me. That is literally my dream. I'm telling you guys, I was literally reading the period book this morning, thinking about how unfair it was. I still had to go to work even though I was in pain, but then I just pushed myself. And then Daniela calls me and she said, "Adrienne, look in the group chat. The boilers are not working. The pool is cold. It's closed, and you get paid." I was like, what kind of manifestation? I need to start writing down some other stuff, because that manifestation was completely instant. Like, I hadn't even walked too far from home. I was like, this is crazy. How can you not believe in God? When things like this happen, it's like, how can you not? I find dwelling unhelpful and can't stay down for too long. So during this winter phase, I find comfort in watching my favourite podcasts and programmes. I have a sweet spot for deep dive YouTube documentaries, especially if they're about celebrities and are dark or twisted. I love journaling, I like reading, I like to spend time with my sisters, but in the same breath, I don't want to be spoken to before 10 a.m. So it's really about nuance and really knowing your own temperament. I know for a lot of women, being on your period has so many negative connotations, and in my earlier menstrual years, I felt the same way. Agitated, inconvenienced, ashamed, but after having irregular periods that were absent for months or lasted for weeks, being in this point of my life where my periods are regular and pretty painless, I can only be grateful. I was subconsciously programmed into shame around this part of my womanhood, and I doubt it was intentional. However, in recent years, I changed my perspective on bleeding and became very proud of my internal death and rebirth cycle. Guys, I'm about to tell you something TMI. My period finished yesterday, and every time my period finishes, my vagina, as in the labias, they dry up and they swell and they get sore and inflamed for no reason. I'm thinking I must have thrush. I must have BV and STD, even though I'm not sexually active. I'm reading in this book, it's something to do with your estrogen levels, where your vagina will get dry after your period. So I guess I have low estrogen. I don't know how I'm going to boost that up, but I don't know what to do because it's really sore and it itches. And it's dry. I'm sure this popcorn's not helping, but all I do is I just use coconut oil. I'll just lather it with coconut oil, go to sleep. It's kind of like the best remedy. I used it for thrush as well. Your pleasant period has ended. The lining of our wombs are blooming. We are in the replenishing process. To me, these times feel as refreshing as a spring cleaning your home and your closet. There's so much potential and richness after ending a cycle. This is when you can set intentions for the month ahead and ask yourself questions like, where do I want to direct my energy this month? What is one way I can add more joy into my existence during this cycle? My spring begins almost immediately after I finish bleeding. For the first 2 days of my 5-day period, I'm more internal, but by day 5, when I'm just spotting, I feel brighter already. I've been attempting to be as diligent as possible in recording my feelings on every day of my cycle, because I want to know specifics about how each day and each hormonal change makes me feel so I can be better prepared. During this phase is when I begin to feel more enthusiastic, more creative, more playful, more happy, and more motivated. It's like in the UK when the temperature gets to about 18 degrees and you realise life isn't as bad as you thought. As your period ends, your estrogen levels begin to increase, which signals for the lining of our wombs to thicken and grow. Estrogen thrives on fats, and so I change what I eat to support my hormones. This is when I eat healthy fats like avocado and cashew nuts. I put butter and coconut oil in my lattes, which sounds gross, but it's actually delicious. I change my fasting hours from 17 hours to 15 and allow myself to eat a bit more intuitively. As we enter ovulation, your estrogen levels are peaking, triggering a surge of luteinizing hormone and testosterone in our systems. At this point of the cycle, you are more attractive to the opposite sex, and the opposite sex is more attractive to you. The purpose of this increase of sexual desire is to inspire you to mate with a partner, as this window is an optimum time for pregnancy, which means you have to be careful not to be misled by your hormones, otherwise you'll end up being pregnant by a bum and have to carry his child for 9 months. During this time, I feel better about myself, my body, the way I look. I tend to feel more social and flirty and have more of a carefree attitude to life. Since the beginning of this year, work has been the main focus of my life, which has kind of caused my social life to suffer. Ideally, I would like to be out socializing as much as possible, and the days in and around ovulation fully support this. But because of my current schedule, I have to compromise and channel this energy in a different way. So I go onto Pinterest, and I add to my mood boards. I'll go on ASOS or Vinted, and fill my saved basket with all the outfits I'm gonna wear when I start socializing again. Does anyone else do this? I find it so soothing, and it leaves me with a feeling of eagerness for all of the events and outings that are to come. So yeah, this is where trying new activities and hobbies would fit in perfectly, and you're most likely to feel good about doing it at this point in your cycle. This is the final phase of our monthly cycle. During ovulation, no egg was fertilized, and so estrogen and progesterone are decreasing. For me, this feels like being more sensitive to my surroundings and wanting to be in a state of introspection. As someone who had suffered from irregular periods, it also induces a sense of anxiety and frustration because I don't always trust that my period is going to start in the days following. My Clue app even sends me notifications saying, "Your period starts today," and then I begin to feel disappointed when it doesn't. I think to myself, what have I done wrong this time? I really do put a lot of time and effort into eating the right things to regulate my period, and so I do get disheartened when my cycle doesn't come on time like clockwork. This is the time to remind yourself to be compassionate and gentle. I remember last month my period didn't come as expected, and I was so upset and wondered if I needed to rework my whole diet plan. But upon reflection, I had a lot of changes and drama going on at work that was really stressing me out, so of course my period didn't come. Stress is a key factor in all of our bodies functioning. I believe the day I identified what stress was doing to my body and chose deliberately to release and let go, my period began the very next day. This is also the perfect time to review things that already exist. Kind of like a retrograde. Any action words beginning with re apply in this time period. Revisit, review, relax, rewatch, remind, remember. I journal every morning, but doing it at these days of the cycle feels even more grounding and cathartic and necessary. Ironically enough, in the cycle that had just passed for me, the autumn phase is when I had the least amount of sleep and the highest amount of stress. Juggling everything in life can get so overwhelming, and sometimes, especially in this phase, so the more conscious I am, the more I can help myself or even schedule practices in advance that can help me during this phase. This is also when I'm more likely to eat comfort foods. Homemade popcorn is my go-to, it feels like food therapy. The key advice in the week leading up to your period, your autumn, is to extend endless amounts of compassion and grace to yourself, whatever that looks like for you. Living in alignment with your hormones begins with having an understanding of how adaptive, changeable, and brilliant our bodies are. Each phase represents different hormones and internal needs to be catered to. While I find happiness in cultivating eating habits that support my womb and tapping into practices that ground me, such as writing and yoga, your monthly habits may look and feel vastly different from mine, and that's okay. The key to all of this is authenticity and great self-awareness. Ultimately, being able to be gentle with yourself and extend endless amounts of self-love and compassion is what living in alignment with your womanhood should look like.